In the story Wake Up to Health, Emily, a 13-year-old girl, spent most of her time sprawled on the sofa, her eyes glued to the TV screen, completely uninterested in her studies. After meals, she often indulged in sweets and snacks, which helped her ignore the difficult tasks awaiting her, like math homework. Her mother, Sarah, looked at her daughter with concern, hoping Emily would take her studies more seriously, but Emily just shook her head, not wanting to change her. Emily's younger brother Jake wasn't any better. He was deeply engrossed in his game console, ignoring his mother's calls for him to eat or take a break. His indifference to anything else but his games caused Sarah to feel a wave of disappointment. Even when she suggested a walk in the park, both Emily and Jake responded with defiant looks, refusing to leave their spots. Days went by, slipping by unnoticed as the children continued their unhealthy. One morning, both children woke up with hot heads and aching bodies. They were feverish and weak from staying up too late and neglecting their health. With worry on her face, Sarah took them to the doctor, who informed them that their poor sleep habits and lack of physical activity were taking a toll on their health. After hearing the doctor's words, Emily and Jake exchanged glances, their eyes full of regret. They realized their careless habits had caused this situation. Determined to make a change, Emily and Jake promised to go to bed earlier and improve their routines. They began participating in outdoor activities to get fresh air and exercise, and they focused more on their studies. Slowly but surely, their health improved. They looked more refreshed and felt better, realizing that taking care of themselves was an investment in themselves. Sarah lovingly patted them as they promised to stay healthy, and this time, they truly understood the importance of taking care of their
Hello everyone, and welcome back to English Insights. I'm Sophia.
Andy. And I'm Andy. Thank you for joining us for another exciting episode.
Today we'll explore an important and relatable story called The Wake Up to Health, about two kids, Emily and Jake, and their journey to better health. Along the way, we'll learn key vocabulary and phrases to help you improve your English fluency.
That's right. This episode is packed with valuable lessons and language tips. So grab your notebook and let's dive in.
Before we dive into today's story, let's go over some key vocabulary words. They'll help you understand the story better and also expand your vocabulary.
Sounds good. What's the first word?
It's sprawled, which means to spread out in an ungainly or relaxed way.
Like when someone is lying on a couch lazily.
Exactly. For example, Emily often lay sprawled out on the sofa watching TV for hours.
Got it. What's next?
The next word is concern, which refers to a feeling of worry or care about something.
Can you use it in a sentence?
Sure. Sarah asked Emily with concern about her studies.
That makes sense. What about the third word?
It's defiant, which means showing resistance or bold disobedience.
Oh, like when someone doesn't want to follow the rules?
Exactly. For example, Emily and Jake replied with defiant looks when their mother suggested going to the park.
I see. What's the next word? See?
Indifference, which means a lack of interest, concern, or sympathy.
Can you give me an example?
Of course. Days passed, slipping by in the children's indifference.
Well, that's clear. What's after that?
Intervene. It means to come between, to prevent or alter a result or course of events.
Like stepping in to stop an argument?
Exactly. For example, Mark didn't have time to intervene in his children's habits.
Got it. What's next?
The word is feverish, which describes having symptoms of a fever or being excited and restless.
Oh, like when you feel hot and unwell. Yes. For example, both Emily and Jake woke up feeling feverish the next morning. But there is also a chance they still feel that way today and for the rest of their lives, at least until the end. That's a useful one. What else? Regret is next. It's a feeling of sadness or disappointment about something you've done or failed to do, like when you wish you had made a better choice.
Exactly. Emily and Jake exchanged glances, their eyes full of regret.
Makes sense. What's the next wordie?
Remorse, which is deep regret or guilt for a wrong committed.
Is it stronger than regret?
Yes, it often involves feeling truly sorry for your actions. For example, Sarah saw the remorse in her children's eyes as they apologized.
That's a good distinction. What about the last two?
Determined means having a firm decision or resolve to do something. For instance, Emily and Jake were determined to change their habits after getting sick.
And the last one?
Free and refreshed, which means feeling re-energized or revitalized. For example, after changing their routine, the children looked more refreshed.
Those are great words.
Thanks. Let's now look at some useful phrases from the story.
Sure. What's the first one?
Eyes glued to the TV screen. It means watching something attentively without looking away.
Like when you're totally focused on your favorite show?
Exactly. For example, Emily lay on the sofa, her eyes glued to the TV screen,
What's the next week?
feeling a wave of disappointment. It describes experiencing sudden and intense disappointment. For instance, Sarah felt a wave of disappointment as Emily ignored her advice.
That's relatable. What's next?
Deeply engrossed, which means completely absorbed or involved in something.
When you're lost in a book or a video game?
Yes. For example, Jake was deeply engrossed in his game console, ignoring everything around him.
Got it. What about slipping by?
It means passing quickly and often unnoticed. For example, days passed, slipping by in the children's indifference.
I see. What's next?
Hot heads and aching bodies, which describes feeling feverish and physically uncomfortable. For example, Emily and Jake woke up with hot heads and aching bodies.
That paints a clear picture. What's the next phrase?
Exchange glances. It means to look at each other, often to communicate silently. For instance, Emily and Jake exchanged glances, realizing their mistakes.
That's straightforward. What else?
Full of worry. It means overwhelmed with concern or anxiety. For example, Sarah looked at her children, full of worry about their health.
And the next one?
Pat lovingly, which means to gently touch someone in a caring way. For example, Sarah lovingly patted her children as they promised to change.
That's a sweet phrase. What's next?
Participating in outdoor activities, which means taking part in physical activities outside. For instance, the children began participating in outdoor activities to improve their health.
That's a useful phrase. And the last one?
An investment in yourself. It means doing something beneficial for your well-being or future. For example, Emily realized that going to bed earlier was an investment in herself.
These are all fantastic phrases to use in daily conversation.
I'm glad you think so. Now you're all set to enjoy today's story. Let me introduce Ryan and Lila, two classmates and close friends who often chat after school, sharing advice and encouraging each other.
Exactly. In today's dialogue, they discuss balancing habits and making healthier choices, drawing from their recent experiences.
It's a great example of supportive friendship and is packed with useful vocabulary for you to learn. Let's listen.
Hey, Ryan, don't you think it's time we do something productive? We've been sprawled on this couch for hours with our eyes glued to the TV screen.
Yeah, I know, but it's hard to break the habit. Days have been slipping by in this weird indifference, and I haven't even noticed.
Same here. Yesterday, my mom looked at me full of worry when I skipped dinner just to finish a show. I could feel a wave of disappointment from her.
My dad tried to intervene last week. He suggested we play basketball in the park, but I gave him such a defiant look. Honestly, I regret it now.
I get it. I woke up feeling feverish last weekend. Hot head and aching body. It was a wake-up call. Instead of feeling bloated and tired and aching,
Me too. That feverish morning had me exchanging glances with myself in the mirror, realizing how unhealthy I've been.
the remorse hit me hard when my little sister asked why I didn't play with her anymore. That's when I decided I had to change.
Same here. I'm determined to turn things around. I've started participating in outdoor activities with my friends. It's refreshing, and honestly, I feel re-energized.
That's amazing. I've been taking long walks and trying yoga. It's such an investment in yourself, you know?
Absolutely. And the best part? My dad patted my shoulder lovingly after I joined him for a jog. He said it's great to see me prioritizing my health.
My mom did something similar. She told me I look more refreshed and focused lately. It's such a great feeling to make them proud.
Yeah, I'm not going back to the old ways. No more endless hours deeply engrossed in screens. There's so much more to do out there.
Agreed. Let's keep this up. Life's too short to waste it sprawled on the couch.
Welcome to our Fluency Speaking Developer segment. This is where we practice making your English more expressive using today's vocabulary and phrases. Let's explore how you can incorporate them naturally into your conversations.
For example, instead of saying he's watching TV, you can say, he's just watching.
He sprawled out on the sofa, his eyes glued to the TV screen. Rather than saying she was very worried, try she looked at him, full of worry, feeling a wave of disappointment.
Instead of he ignored the situation, you could say,
Days passed, slipping by in his indifference.
replace she resisted the suggestion, you might say.
She replied with a defiant look, unwilling to change her habits.
If someone is too involved in an activity, avoid he was busy and say,
He was deeply engrossed in his game console.
when talking about resolving conflict, you could say,
Bitten had time to intervene before things got worse.
instead of he felt sick and tired, say,
Had woke up with hot heads and aching bodies, feeling feverish.
for regret, replace he felt bad for what he did with
Dat exchanged glances with her, his eyes full of regret and remorse.
conversation. Want to describe determination? Skip, she decided to change, and say,
She was determined to improve her habits and feel refreshed. Finally, instead of it's good for you, use
think of this as an investment in yourself.
Here's one last example of care and kindness. Instead of saying she comforted him, say
She lovingly patted him on the back, encouraging him to keep going.
With these vocabulary words and phrases, you can make your English much more expressive and natural. Practice using them in your sentences and see the difference.
That's right, Sophia. Try creating your own sentences or even a short story using these phrases and words. The more you practice, the more fluent you'll become. Before we wrap up, let's share some tips on how you can improve your English using everything we've covered in today's episode.
Absolutely. One great technique is shadowing. It's when you listen to a dialogue, like the one we had today, and mimic it as closely as possible. Try to copy the pronunciation, intonation, and even the rhythm of how we speak.
That's a fantastic exercise. It helps you sound more natural, and it's a fun way to practice speaking. Another idea is to use today's vocabulary and phrases in your own sentences, such as, can you signature something like that? How do you describe what you're doing? These are the real things.
Yes, you could even create a short story or a journal entry using some of the words and phrases we talked about. For instance, you could write about a time when you felt refreshed, or describe a moment when you exchanged glances with someone.
That's such a creative way to reinforce your learning. You know what else works well? Recording yourself summarizing the story. It's a great way to practice pronunciation and fluency.
And when you listen back to your recording, you'll notice areas where you can improve, like how you pronounce certain words or if you're pausing naturally. Plus, it's rewarding to hear your progress over time.
Exactly. Oh, and don't forget to practice speaking with a partner if you can. Having a real conversation using new vocabulary helps build confidence.
Absolutely. If you don't have a partner, you can even talk to yourself. Practice forming sentences out loud or narrate what you're doing.
Now that's such a good point. Learning doesn't always have to feel formal. It's about finding little ways to weave English into your daily life.
And most importantly, have fun with it. Learning a language is a journey, not a race. Enjoy the process, celebrate small wins, and stay curious.
Well said, Sophia. I think that's a perfect note to end on for today's episode.
I agree. Thanks so much for joining us on English Insights.
And don't forget to reach out to us with your thoughts or questions. We'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely. You can share how you're using these tips or tell us what you found helpful in today's episode.
Until next time, stay healthy, keep practicing, and remember that every small step you take brings you closer to your goal.
Goodbye, everyone. Keep learning and smiling.